Cam, did I see you at the winter meetings? You weren't there, were
No,
you?
I wish I would have been there. I was there in spirit though. I was there in spirit.
I wasn't there. Nobody was
You
there.
know you know what it was is we were so locked in and there was so much information going out via social media that it felt like we were there. That's what it was.
Well, here, I'm just leading up to my joke with a lot of anticipation. Nobody was at the winter meetings, or everyone was at the winter meetings, if you want to say they were remote, because the winter meetings were actually this weekend. I don't know if you realized, but more of the trade and signing volume actually went down this weekend than what happened at the winter meetings. We had a couple big moves, obviously, Soto, Crochet, etc. But I mean, this is the rush that we look for. First baseman
Absolutely.
carousel, pitchers finding spots. I mean, we had one deal crack at 4:50 a.m. Eastern time. I'm like, what is going on at 4:50 a.m. Eastern time? That was one that Ken got. I can't remember which. I think that was the Jock Peterson deal. I'm like,
Yeah.
4:50? I checked my phone. I happened to wake up super early this morning. I
Me
was up in
too.
the
Me
early
too.
fives, and I look. I'm like, really? I missed something for a few hours? So players are
And then
looking to get
close your
that
eyes.
paycheck
Then close your
right
eyes,
before
and
the
then all of a
holiday.
sudden you got Walker Buehler news. It's like,
Exactly.
all right, I'm gonna shut my eyes for a couple more hours. Oh wait, I'm back up again. So I love
Yep.
it. I love where we are.
They're trying to get that paycheck before the holidays. So let's jump in because we have a ton to do in this show. And I know some fans that are watching right now and interacting with us are like, can you do 3 hours today? Unfortunately, we're booked for two. So let's charge the damn mound.
He's charging the mound.
We'll start with the most recent ones. Obviously, there were moves over the last few days, and the last live show for FT was on Friday. So let's begin with Walker Buehler, a little over 21 million bucks guaranteed, and there's some incentives in there to up the ante by about $2.5 million. So he's a Boston Red Sox for 2025. Cam, what do you think about this move for Boston and for Walker Buehler, who had a really tough regular season, and then it all came together for him for the Dodgers in the postseason for the most part, right? We saw him get better as the playoffs went on, and he looked like the usual clutch, shove it Walker Buehler. But now we get a full season of him at Fenway Park in the AL East. Pressure's not a problem, but that's tough ballpark, tough division. Do you think it'll result in him shining and then leading to another big contract once he gets to the end of this?
I really thought about this, Scotty, this morning when I saw the news break. And the first thought that came to mind after, good for him getting his money for 1 year along with the incentives. But, I started to replay the scenario, which was Walker Buehler being hurt throughout the season for the Dodgers. I look back at it from a competitor standpoint, and there are situations where at times you're looking at your team and you're seeing all of these guys banged up, right? At the time you're looking at the Dodgers rosters. When I replayed in my head, I think there was a world where Walker Buehler may have tried to come back a little early, right? He wanted to be there for his team. So it took him, some regular season woes, some ups and downs to really kind of find himself, really kind of trust his stuff again, really let it go. And you saw down the stretch, in the playoffs on, I wouldn't say limited rest, but being able to come back, bounce back, and then the stuff be there. That was impressive to me. And he just looked like the guy who actually not only got his confidence back, but he started to get healthy when the Dodgers needed him most. So I think he's going to take that, that confidence right into the offseason. You get a 1-year deal like that with great incentive base of, great incentives, put in your contract. I think he's going to be, more than ready to, lead that young rotation. I think this is a guy that they needed, a guy who's won. He knows what it looks like. He's a dog on the mound. I think that can rub off on some of those younger guys. And I think now you look at Boston, they're building a nice young rotation. And you add a guy like that with some moxie and some history of being a champion. I like what they're doing.
Okay. Well, take me through, and I'll give you some thoughts on Walker Buehler. But first off, take me through Boston's rotation now and how you think it stacks up, against some of the better rotations in that division. The Rays have a bunch of good arms coming back. I know they traded away
Yep.
Jeffrey Springs, but there are a lot of good arms coming back, headlined by Shane McClanahan. And then, of course, the Yankees decided to pivot on Soto and hit the run prevention aspect pretty hard. I mean, Max Fried is a one when he's healthy. So what do you think about the rotations and how they stack up?
Well, I think if you look at what Baltimore lost in Corbin Burns, you have Grayson Rodriguez, who is still shaping into a guy who looks like he can be an ace. But when you go now, Boston's rotation. I love Garrett Crochet. We all love Garrett Crochet. Tanner Houck took a huge jump in the right direction. Brandon Bayo has showed what he's capable of doing. God forbid if they can get just a little bit of Lucas Giolito from those early Chicago days, what he might can do. And then you see that Walker Buehler piece right there. I think you have a great foundation for a quality rotation, and not to mention you have Patrick Sandoval back at some point, so you get that depth. I don't think Craig Breslow is done, but I think if you look at it right now, compared to where Toronto is, like you said, Tampa Bay will always throw out some good arms. Even if guys are hurt, they'll figure out a way to have some quality, guys in the rotation. But if I look at it, I would say right now, going off experience as well, experience is huge. A lot of those young guys had a chance to get their feet wet and throw a lot of big innings. I like them as the second best rotation in that division. I think the Yankees going out, you got Max Fried, you got Rodon, you got Garrett Cole, you got Hill still. Who am I missing, Scotty? I think you got Clark Schmidt still. I think the Yankees have the best rotation right now when you add the Gold Glover and Max Fried and another southpaw. But I think Boston has done a great job of doing their due diligence and making sure that they continue to put out a quality a rotation. I think if I'm a fan, I'm excited about what the future holds as far as opening day.
The Yankees right now. So with the Yanks, Cole, Fried, Rodon, Hill, Schmidt. That's a really strong five.
If Clark Schmidt's your five, you like your chances. Right?
Yeah. Him and Hill, obviously, we haven't even scratched the surface, you would think, based on the age and the development in the big leagues. You've got Fried in his prime. I mean, you could make a case that Cole is a drop past his prime at this point, but obviously still pitching like a 1 for the most part. So, they're going to be in pretty good shape, I would say. But the Red Sox, in my mind, Cam, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to be as good as the Yanks, but to me, what they've done in the last week and a half with Buehler and with Crochet puts them in legit wild card conversation, at least, if not in a fight for the division. And I haven't been confident enough to say that in quite a few years. And now I do feel that way with the way the rotation is set up and the way that they've got young position players that did a great job there. I'll keep giving credit to Chaim Bloom because that was his job to rebuild the team. They've got a lot coming in the pipe. It's one of the best farm systems, and the quality is towards the top, and it's almost ready for the big leagues. So that's great. So it's the pitching that they needed to hammer. And right now you look at the rotation and you're like, okay, I'm starting to see this. Of course, Buehler's a little bit of a question mark, but if you believe in the playoff Buehler that we saw, which is what I believe in, how, the fastball was getting tattooed in the first half of the season. The four-seamer, that got fixed a little bit, especially in the postseason. And then I remember I was looking back. It was the game 3 against the Mets in the NLCS. Best drop ever on his knuckle curve. Most sweep ever on his sweeper. Most fade he's ever had on his horizontal sinker there. So the RPMs spin rates and everything was up.
It was up. It was all ticking up. So, and again, I think that's just a product like anybody else coming off injury. It takes a little longer for you to get healthy. Even when you're cleared, doesn't mean you're completely healthy. And that's what I think sometimes fans, they don't realize when they say, "Guy, hey, he's cleared, he's ready to be back." You're still working through kinks, right? You're still trying to get your mind to trust your body and trying to get those things to sync up as well. So I think what I saw at the end of the year, Walker Buehler found his confidence because when push came to shove, he was giving it all he got and realized, okay, I'm healthy. I've got 96 again. I got 97 again. And I think, him being in that situation helped him get his confidence back and going, I'm going to be okay. And I think that's why he got this lucrative 1-year deal.
Yeah, good for him. And now let's hit one other big pitching signing. 3 years, $75 million. There's deferrals in there for Sean Manaea to return to the New York Mets. Cam, I'm going to pat myself on the back because for most of the offseason, I've been pinpointing this player as the guy that the Mets targeted. Maybe I had some good insight, but this is the guy that they loved. They believed in what they saw in the second half. They loved him as a person, so they got to see, how he interacted. My guess is that he was trying to find himself a 4th year from a team, but ends up getting a really nice contract for 3 years, by far the biggest deal that he's ever signed. And this guy who, in my mind, Cam, finally showed number 1, number 2 stuff for the first time in his career with the tweak that he made. It's the tweak that we like to talk about frequently on this show. Watch Chris Sale, mimic Chris Sale, become mini Chris Sale. That's what he did with the Mets in the second half of the
Yes.
season into the postseason. So if you buy into that continuing and staying healthy, you have a potential number 1 or number 2 starter for your rotation, a rotation that I thought before this needed some work, dude, because there's a lot of reclamation projects. They're not all necessarily going to hit every year. And you look at what they've got compared to, say, the Phillies and even the Braves when Strider comes back. I was like, damn, this is not the best rotation in this division. I know they got Soto. They're going to help the offense out, but they really needed this in my mind.
Listen, I know we don't play the game on paper, Scott, but if I told you right now, the Mets rotation, you sign Manaea, you re-sign Manaea. If I told you the rotation was going to be Kodai Senga, David Peterson, Frankie Montas, we don't know what Clay Holmes is going to be as a starter. Maybe Taylor McGill, Jose Budo, and Paul Blackburn. I think if I'm a Mets fan, I like the rotation depth that you have right now, right? I mean, I know you want to go out and you want to sign a Corbin Burns type of player, but I think when you look at the familiarity, you look at how comfortable he was in New York, like you said, found something. I still don't know if Sean Manaea is an ace, and that could be a little bit biased because I've been in the box against him. I faced him, and I know it's not the same Sean Manaea that we saw this season. But I think that's a great signing. I think when you talk about the pockets that Steve Cohen has, I don't think that's going to hurt them in any way, and it's going to continue to still allow them to go out and make some little moves here and there to try to continue to build around Juan Soto and the rest of those guys.
What you saw from Manaea, do you think that he can be that guy over the long term now? You know, the change that he made. I mean, for me, I'm like, damn, if he made that change that quickly, he's clearly a guy that can keep that change. You know, sometimes a guy makes a tweak and then it ends up being adjusted to. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen with him. I know the last start he had in the playoffs wasn't as good. He also was potentially running out of gas. I mean,
Absolutely.
the year before, he wasn't putting together a full year of starts.
Was that the second time he faced them? That was the second time he faced those guys too. So
yeah, it
think
was.
about his
it was
last start. They are already familiar with the angle, the look. So I give him a little bit of leeway, you know, on that. But you know, listen, I faced Chris Sale, and again, the Manaea that I saw this past year was not the guy that I faced. With him changing his arm slot, with him adding another pitch, giving just a different angle, especially the lefties as well as righties. Listen, nobody's Chris Sale, but I do think he could be an extremely good starter. I just need to see it again because of the track record. There's been some ups and downs. I know he made adjustments, but like any human, sometimes we tend to creep back into old habits. So, you know, I'm sure he's working extremely diligent to continue to not go back to that because we saw the numbers. If you go back to the previous Manaea, you know, he would tend to give it up at times. But I think this guy who found something, I think if it's broke, don't fix it. I think he's going to try his best to hone in on that, continue to refine those skills. And I think he could be, I don't know if he can be as dominant, but I think he'll have another dominant season. And one, because they're playing for something. I like the cohesion, right? When you come into a situation, an atmosphere where guys believe, it's contagious, it's infectious. So I think when he comes in with that confidence, knowing that, hey, we're trying to build something here, I think he can go out and dominate once again. I don't know if he can do it at that level, but I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah, his final 11 appearances of the regular season was about a 3.5 ERA, and the strikeout to walk numbers down the stretch were elite. And walks had often been a problem in the past for him. So it's crazy. I mean, you lower the release point, you add some crossfire, you get a little sail action in there. I know he had a new changeup grip, and all of a sudden it also helped the control. It wasn't just how deceptive he was with what he was bringing to the table. Okay, so last part of this equation is the Mets payroll. Looks like right now it's projected to be the luxury tax payroll, $280 million. The Steve Cohen tax is $301 million. I think they're going over that number and they don't give a crap because I think they're probably going to still add one or two pitchers at least, right? And I'm thinking that they're going to do some action with the bullpen. The bullpen market hasn't moved a ton yet, the relief pitcher market. And then there's still conversations about what they're doing with their infield, right? Are they bringing back Pete? If not, are they in the running for Bregman and moving Vientos over to first? So what do you think is next, and what would you like to be next for the Mets?
You know, for me, it's hard to speak on Pete, right? It's Pete, as the market continues to kind of, you know, work itself out, you know, I'm starting to wonder where is Pete, right? As far as him on a 6 or 7 year deal. Is he going to be okay with maybe taking less years with more AAV? I'm not sure. I think Pete is a guy who, if you put him back in that lineup with Juan Soto, with Castro, Nimmo, Vientos, I think the kind of guy he is in the community, the clubhouse, I think sometimes those things, go unseen. I always say there's no stat for character, what he brings to a team. I think I would love to see them re-sign Pete, but then to your point, with the money that's left, and they, like you said, Steve Cohen's not afraid to go over payroll. I think they need to go and make sure they get some bullpen depth. I think last year that's where we saw them, have struggles. That's where they were hurt. You've got Diaz out there. I think they need to go out there, and I continue to throw his name out there. Estevez, I think, is a guy. I know the strikeouts aren't there for a lot of people, but I think he's shown he could be a great bridge guy, a guy that you can count on if you put a good defense behind him. So I think those two spots are avenues where I think they need to attack. I think they still will attack. And we know David Stearns has done a great job of, in the past having to work with less of a payroll. So now you give him the option to have some money to spend. I think he's still going to go out and make those small moves that go unnoticed and go unseen that help you really get to the finish line, because you're going to need all 40 guys during the season. So I think there are going to be some more moves made that may not be as cute and as pretty, but they're going to help this team, add some depth pieces.
I know some people wanted the Mets to be in the running for Corbin Burns. They've got money. They have a rotation that still has a little bit of incompleteness to it. And there's the David Stearns, Corbin Burns connection. I think this again solidifies they're probably not going to go that route. I mean, Burns is going to get or should get more than Max Fried based on the pedigree in the last several years. And that's at least in the low 200s. I mean, I think looking at 220s, 230s. Yeah, right. So Corbin Burns is looking at probably low to mid 30s AAV, depending on how many years he gets. If you stretch another year, you could have a little bit of a lower average annual value. Sometimes teams will do that to take less of a luxury tax hit, which is what the Yankees did with Max Fried. But again, I don't see the Mets getting in the running for someone like Burns. It sounds like the one core that Stearns wants to live off of with starting pitchers is to not go on those 6, 7, 8+ year deals with starters, just not trusting the way. I don't think it's just the way that arms age, because some arms age really well. I think it's the era that we're in with starting pitching injuries and how much of an issue that is. So anyway, let us know your thoughts on these two, and then we'll cover all of the rest. But Sean Manaea to the New York Mets. Walker Buehler signs with the Boston Red Sox. We'll get to all the moves, all the big ones. But coming up next, Willie Randolph is going to join us as we remember the late, great legend, one of one in our sport, Rickey Henderson. Be right back. All right, so let's hit some baby moves. I mean, they'd be bigger moves. It could lead off a show if it was the right day, but we've got way too much going on. So the Reds and the Yankees made a little deal hours after our last show, which was Friday. So Jose Trevino goes over to the Reds to be the backup catcher to Tyler Stevenson. And in exchange, the Yankees get themselves Alex Jackson, who's going to give them some catcher depth. He's been in the bigs for a minute. Former, I think, first-round pick. He's bounced around a lot. And then Fernando Cruz is the interesting one for me. I don't know how much Fernando Cruz you've watched. He's 35 years old. He's still pre-arb, so he's still making league minimum, which is another issue that I want to go over. But yes, that might be the best splitter, forkball, whatever you want to call it, in baseball. It's unique. He strikes a ton of dudes out. In fact, when I watch him sometimes, Cam, I'm like, I feel like this guy should be better than what he looks like in terms of results. Is he getting, Great American Small Parked?
Listen, I think that always is in the back of a pitcher's head. But one thing that we've seen, right, is what the Yankees have been able to do with pitching the last few years, right? They've done a great job when you talk about Matt Blake and how he's been able to change the course of guys' career. Look at Clay Holmes. He was, after leaving Pittsburgh, became one of the more dominant bullpen guys in the game. I think what they're going to do is they're going to do their best to simplify his repertoire. Right, you're going to have to, make it simple for him because the stuff plays. When you talk about that elite splitty, and what, how devastating it's been. When you look at his stuff, he should be better. And first guy comes to mind, Scott, is a guy like Tommy Kahnle. How many changeups did we see Tommy Kahnle throw? in a row without seeing a fastball. This could be one of those
So many.
situations where they go, hey, man, you got one of the best splitties in the game. How about we figure out how to control it, right? And we use that as your bread and butter. That's your one and your two, and then we'll set up the fastball off of that. So I think with Matt Blake's track record, what he's been able to do in getting the best out of the guys, I think this is why the Yankees made that move because I think when you look around and look at that roster, they're starting to see themselves shape into a contender, right? I think right now already they're better defensively. I think as soon as you move Judge back to right field, they're a better defensive team. You go and get Belly. We saw Jazz get, extremely, comfortable at third. We don't know what they're going to do with him. But I think now Cash is going out and touching those little pieces, those little unsung, those little unnoticed pieces that you're going to need to win big ball games. So you go get that guy. You got Devin Williams. You got Matt Blake. I love what they're doing right now.
Yeah, it's good bullpen.
Deep depth.
Sad news this weekend as we lost one of the legends in our sport way too soon. And that is Rickey Henderson at 65 years old, the Hall of Famer. Willie Randolph joins him now, knew him well, former big leaguer, former coach, the whole deal. Willie, great to have you on. Sorry for your loss. I know you knew Rickey well, but how are you doing?
Hi guys. Good. Thanks for having me. It's just so weird just looking at that last shot you showed me here. The last couple of days have been tough for all of us. Ricky and I go way back, a lot of history, and just trying to get out of my feelings totally because it's been so devastating for me, a lot of people. But then when I step back and I just think about all the great times we had together and the fact that Ricky made everybody smile. I have so many memories and stories about him, and I've been with him for so many years, and we played together. He was my first base coach when I managed the Mets. So again, a lot of things going through my mind right now. Thanks for having me on so we can honor our friend, and one of the greatest players of all time.
Hey, Willie, it's Cam Maybin here.
Hey, Cam.
Man,
Hey, buddy.
you're already making me emotional, man.
Yeah,
Just want to say
it's tough.
I always appreciate you. You always was, if I came by, you always grabbed me, pulled me aside, gave me a little nugget here and there. I'm getting goosebumps as well as Willie,
Yeah,
as well as Ricky. We can talk about how amazing he was, and we know how great he was and how hard he worked. But I just wanted you to touch on the person off the field, right? People know
yeah,
how great he was and know how much charisma he had, and some might say he played a little arrogant, which you have to. I think you needed to play that way. That's what made Ricky. But can you talk about the man off the field? I always talked about he was a guy, if I was having a conversation and he walked on the field, I would stop that conversation just to see what he was doing. He had that
yeah.
type of nostalgia. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, Ricky just loved life, Cam. I mean, his wife Pam and awesome prayers go out to her. I'll try to reach out to her later. But he just loved to enjoy life, man. He's had a smile on his face, great with the kids. Um, he just loved to be in the mix where he was around people. Like you said, he was always giving back. Loved to play cards. He just loved to be competing and just being out there and just enjoying people. But he was a family man first. I remember always being around his kids and his family. His mom was always at every game, and she was the loudest person in the stadium. You can hear her. 'Cause Coliseum wasn't that many people back in the day, so you could always hear her. But family man, just a good human being, and just loved to have fun, love music, and just again, just a guy that just really embraced who he was and how what an impact he had on people. He accepted that, and every time you were around, he made you feel special.
Hey, you know how we play cards, Willie. Was he one of those dudes? Was
Oh
he going? Was
yeah,
he going?
he,
You know,
Talk,
he was gonna
talking
let you have
trash,
it, huh?
man. I'll tell you a quick little story about that, and this is how competitive he. Because it's all about being competitive, Cam. When he was coaching for me at first base with the Mets, sometimes you got to separate players and coaches when it comes to getting competitive. Because sometimes those card games can get pretty heated. You know that, right? So I
Yeah.
used to always tell Ricky, I say, Ricky, you're the coach now, man. I know you think you can still play, you probably can, But I said, you got to be careful with playing cards with the guys. Maybe a little wager on the side. I said, I don't have to come back to the back of the plane and break up a fight, okay? So I would always tell them all the time, Ricky, you can't play with the guys. Okay, oh, I understand, Willow. Okay, I'm good. Then I would peek back there again. He's there playing again. Ricky, I called him off the next day. Ricky, you can't play cards with the guys. You got to be careful with that, okay? Ownership's getting on me about this. So, no problem, Willow. And he just couldn't stop doing it. He kept playing. So eventually we just let it go and everything like that. But that's just how competitive he was, and we loved to be with the guys. And even though he wasn't a player anymore, he carried himself like a player. And I'm telling you, back in those days, I guarantee if you gave him a bat and a glove, he'd go out there and still would help you win a ball game.
Hey,
Yeah, I
Willie.
love that.
Oh, go ahead, Cam.
No, I was just gonna ask one more, Scotty. I was gonna say, we
Yeah.
always take something. We always take something from people that we come across. And I was just telling
Yes.
Scotty and telling, Mark, our producer, unfortunately, I was only able to see Willie when we were coming to play Oakland. But I always made sure that I, came to grab you legends, right? And I remember asking
Yes.
asking Ricky, I said, Ricky, what do I need to do to go to the next level? Like, what can I do? He said, listen, baby, let me tell you this. Ricky gonna tell you this. He said, well, what you gotta, he said, this is what he said. He said, now Ricky can tell you
Third
this, baby.
person.
Listen. He said, it doesn't matter what they believe. If you don't believe in yourself, none of that matters. He said, no
That's
matter how
right.
good they tell you are, if you don't believe it, you got nothing to go off on, baby. He said, that's what Ricky got for you. What did you
That's
get
right.
from him? You know what I mean? What did
Oh,
you take from him? We take something, and you were a legend in my eyes. You're you're the captain. What did you get
yeah.
from Ricky that you'll forever carry with you throughout the rest of your life?
Ricky was the first guy that had real swag. I'm talking about real swag. A lot of guys think they have swagger, but Ricky, exuded it. When we walked on the field, even when he first came up, he was pretty much a base stealer. He learned how to hit, but Ricky just had this confidence, this air of confidence about him. Even with veterans, he got into the mix with the veterans. He showed respect, but he still always felt like he belonged. And you could tell that he had supreme confidence and ability. And that's why a lot of the veteran guys kind of embraced him or whatever. They saw this young, cocky kid from Oakland, and he was always, had the style. He was popping the collar and the whole thing. But you could tell that he was a player, that he understood how to play the game. He grew up in the Billy Ball era, the Moneyball era and all that. And he just loved to go out there and just be aggressive. Billy Martin was the guy who said, listen, hey, you my guy. You're my igniter. Go out there and set the tone. And that's all you have to say to Ricky. Just let him be himself. Just let him go out there and have fun. And he was one of the first guys that almost got to the point where you were like, this guy's way too cocky, man. We got to knock this guy down a little bit. But he just never changed. And he always showed respect for the game, but he enjoyed it to the hilt. And that's what I always remember about Ricky, is being a guy that had supreme confidence in his ability, understood that he was an important part of winning, and took a lot of pride and setting the tone for the team. And you walked on the field, and back then they were playing MC Hammer, You Can't Touch This, right? The song would come over with the loudspeaker, and it would be blaring, and you see Ricky just trot out the left field, and you can see he's saying to the guys, hey, get on my back. I'm going to take you to the promised land. Let's go.
And you know what, Willie? I think about Ricky's style in terms of how he spoke to the media and his phrases and third person talk and all of that. I'm like, he would have been even bigger now in today's
Yes.
world that's looking for, a little bit of spice, a little bit of flair. In my mind, sometimes the game of baseball could use more personalities with even a sliver of a similarity to what Ricky brings to the table. So back then, how was it received? Like you spent, multiple stints with him, right? You spent a good chunk of time with the Yanks, and then a little bit with the A's with him. So how was it received with Ricky, with teammates, opponents, media, etc.? Were there mix-ups sometimes where someone would be like, what did that guy say to me? And you're like, no. You don't know Ricky's style. You haven't been enough, around Ricky enough to understand what this guy does.
Yeah, well, he wasn't always very comfortable around the media. He just liked to just kind of be one of the guys and stuff. And he'd tell you how great he was, but he was great. But if you were in the opposition, you didn't care too much for him because he had maybe a little bit too much swag. Again, he wasn't trying to show anybody up, but he's just almost envious and jealous of the fact that this kid can go out and play and just have so much fun. If you were his teammate, he was the ultimate, man. I mean, I can't remember one guy's ever said a bad thing about Ricky as a teammate. Now, he had his little quirks or whatever, and Cam, some of the veterans get a little more special treatment to stars or whatever. And so he was always making sure his legs were in tip-top shape. So he spent a lot of time in the trainer's room, but he was always there ready to post. So some of the teammates might have thought, well, he got preferential treatment. And in some cases, Billy did give him that. But Billy understood where his bread was buttered. And he understood that, if you keep Rickey happy and make sure his legs are in shape and ready to rock and roll, that he gave you a chance to win. So overall, I think, though, once you got to know Rickey Henderson, you had to love him, man, because, again, he gave you the shirt off his back. He was always very giving. That's why I made him my first base coach, my base winning coach, because I had a young David Wright and a young Jose Reyes, and he taught those guys how to be aggressive, and we just took off after that. So he was a different kind of cat, but once you got a chance to know this guy, spend time with him, man, like I said, man, he was golden all the way. I'm going to miss him so much because he was one of those very rare human beings that transcended the game. He set the tone. He changed the game. When you think about it, people weren't doing things that Rickey was doing when he first came to the league. Everyone tried to emulate what he was doing, and just to play with the ease and just the love of the game that he exuded every time he walked on the field.
My thing, Willie, is that the game of baseball was getting away from the stolen base aggressiveness, and rule changes actually had to be made to get back to that, in my mind, golden era.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we produce more Rickey Henderson-like base stealing threats? So how would you characterize the way that his base stealing game was? Obviously, he was the best to ever do it. So, what was it that stood out? Why was he so damn good, aside from just the speed, at just being a relentless space stealer?
It was intimidation, Scott. It was just, Rickey could lead off the game with a walk, steal second, steal third. If you didn't watch it, he'd steal home, right, too, right? And so I was hitting behind him. I get him over. Don Mattingly would drive him in, or Dave Winfield would drive him in after that, Don Baylor and those guys. But he was intimidating. When you walked on the field, Rickey would just kind of swagger out there with that little bebop that he had, the way he walked around. And you just knew, man, that we're not on our toes, man. First of all, they're going to run us out of the ballpark. And he was the kind of guy that not just getting on base and stealing bases, but he'd take you deep. He played defense. It was just, we weren't intimidated by much back then, guys. But Rickey was the kind of guy that you noticed he was in the ballpark, and you knew when he came to the plate, you better be ready to move, because Rickey was going to put pressure on you. And it was an intimidation factor there that a lot of guys back then didn't have, especially leadoff hitters. Now, it's rare that he had all those home runs, obviously, leading off the game. A lot of guys, maybe Bobby Bonds was maybe the first guy to really have big power in the leadoff spot. But a lot of guys, but guys like me, they were line drive guys who set the tone, get on base. But Rickey would put you on the board right away. So you walk into the ballpark, you think you're going to play a good game, and it's 1-0. You're down 1-0 or whatever. And then they would keep the pressure on you, because Billy, he would always push the envelope, and Rickey loved to show off and show out, and he did that every time he walked on the field.
Hey, Scott, we call that was known around the league as a Rickey rally.
Yes, that's right.
As I came across and you thought your guy would pop, you hear coach go, Rickey rally. You're like, what's that? He said, oh, that's 1-0. That means you about to lead the game off 1-0. So I appreciate you touching on that. I want to switch lanes a little bit. I want to talk to you about right now. I see you got your New York hat on, and I want to talk Yankees. We all saw Juan Soto Inc., the biggest deal in sports history. But as a guy who's done it for a long time, like I know, the beauty of baseball is one guy, doesn't do it all for you.
Right.
Right. It takes a team. It takes a lot of character, a lot of selflessness, a lot of guys pulling the rope in the same direction. Right now, can you speak on just, you think the job that you think Cash has done since pivoting from Juan Soto?
Yes. First of all, it goes without saying, Juan Soto's phenomenal. This guy, the top 3 hitters in the game. So anybody would love to have a Juan Soto. Obviously, free agent. He waited a long time for this to happen. And it was the perfect storm for him. To make that kind of money, to have Stevie Cohen across town, and have the Yankees with the center stage being, World Series, even though we lost, it was perfectly set up for him. God bless him. He made the right decision for him and his family. But I think that, and to answer your question, second part of your question about Cash, I think Cash has done a great job of kind of pivoting and kind of resetting a little bit. I love the moves he's made. Even Goldschmidt, who a guy that I've had at the WBC, This guy has some stuff left in the tank. I think that's an excellent pickup. He play defense, and he's a leader. So picking up him and the lefty, of course, one of the best lefties in the game, in Freed. I remember Cody Bellinger when I played with his dad, and him and my son and Ken Griffey Jr. running around. Well, Ken Griffey wasn't up then, but him and my son were running around the field taking batting practice. Little snotty-nosed kid. When I see him in spring training, I'm gonna be all over him, man. Because I just tell him all the time, stop running. You always running around the clubhouse, man. Sit down, sit down. And he was always wiping his nose, always, snot coming down and everything. But I'm gonna get all over him when I see him in spring training, because I remember that so vividly when he was a young kid running around the Yankee clubhouse. But and then also to what was the other deal they made? That's right. What was the last one they made? With the pitcher, they had Goldschmidt. Oh, are you kidding me? Devin Williams?
Yeah.
This kid is filthy, man. And if he's healthy, guys, that's going to be the steal of the offseason, man. Because this guy is nasty, filthy. And now you can move Weaver into that 8th spot where, okay, maybe get multiple innings out of him. But if Devin Williams is healthy, that is the steal of the offseason, man. I'm looking forward to watching him pitch. He's nasty.
Yeah, one of the top relievers in the sport. You're right, and I'm frankly surprised that there weren't more teams involved. It looks like the Yankees and the Dodgers are kind of winning that sweepstakes. I'm like, he's not even expensive for most teams.
Yeah.
So good get by the Yanks.
Yeah, I thought that was an awesome pickup.
With all due respect, they didn't give. With all due respect, I love Nestor, but from a business standpoint, they didn't have to give up a lot to get that guy, which is beautiful.
No, they didn't. Give up a prospect, and Nestor should bounce back pretty well. But again, it's the Soto situation going into this offseason next season, because Devin is a free agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's free agent. So you got the same scenario going into the offseason there. But hopefully he'll like it there. Hopefully he'll pitch well, and we can retain him or whatever. But I thought that was an excellent get for the Yankees. And Cashman has done a great job, like I said, pivoting and kind of, this could be a blessing in disguise, guys. No one wants to think that Juan Soto's a guy like, oh, well, okay, Juan Soto, okay, can go across town. No, the Yankees might be stronger, and that's saying a lot when you think about what Juan Soto brings to the table. One of the best hitters I've seen.
Yeah, they had a lot of places to kind of patch up, and they've been doing it. So, Willie, this was really fun. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, much needed. A lot of therapy for a lot of fans that are watching and listening right now. So, thanks for sharing stories about Rickey. Again, so sorry for your loss.
Well, thank you. Yes, and it has been like therapy for me, because I've been crying for a couple of days, and I get goosebumps right now. But just want to give props to Rickey, again, a guy who transcended the game and just did so many things for so many people. But my thoughts and prayers are obviously with Pam and the family. So thank you guys for having me, man. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and let's have a great and happy New Year. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Appreciate
Willie.
you, brother.
Yeah, really appreciate you. Have a great holiday. Willie Randolph with us on FT. All right, I got 2 tweets I want to show you about Rickey. One is from Codify, so some numbers. Please understand that Rickey Henderson stole 1,406 bases during his big league career, and that no active player is within 1,000 of that total. Just to put in context what he was putting together season after season, Cam. And it's not like he was a slap hitter that would just get on first all the time. He had pop.
Yeah, listen, I sit here and I think about, my best friend, D. Gordon, one of the fastest guys I've seen. I think about Billy Hamilton. Some of the guys that I've just seen, that I've came across who were just extremely fast, but you said it, Scott, it wasn't just about the speed. There was a method to the madness. You watch clips of Rickey talking about, stealing third base and watching the elbows and watching, how the elbows have to move when you go home opposed to going to pick. So he was a student of the game. He was ahead of his time. When you talk about Willie speaks about the Moneyball era, understanding what he had to do as a player. He was a special one, and I'm very grateful that I was able to cross paths the few times that I did.
All right, let's do one story too. Howie Rose, a longtime Mets radio broadcaster, said, "My favorite Rickey Henderson story. Remember when players wrote the uniform number of a traded or released teammate on their caps? One time, Rickey had 24 on his cap. I asked him to whom that was a tribute. He said, that's Rickey's number. It's a tribute to Rickey." That's good.
Tribute to myself, baby.
Yeah. You had to know that the answers were often Rickey. Who's the best player? Rickey. Who's going to get the big
Yes.
hit tonight? Rickey. Hey,
Yes.
this game's all about confidence. You want confidence? You weren't going to find a player with more of it. And to me, you know what came to mind in terms of the confidence and the competitiveness is Michael Jordan. Obviously, different personalities in certain ways, but you felt that when you heard how Rickey described his own game, and that was really cool to me. Someone watching him at a pretty young age, but being like, "This guy's the best," and he says it. That's what I like.
Even listening to talk about him being in the training room, right? When I came up, there was a time where they were like, "You're too young. Get out of the training room. You don't need to be in there." And I'm thinking about how ahead of the time he was, where he had older guys pissed off about it, but he was just taking care of his body, right? Maintenance. And I'm thinking now that's all the game is. They force you to go into the training room, force you to get treatment. So I'm just thinking about him as a player. He was ahead of his time.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing. Let's sizzle, because this weekend was ridiculous with moves, and it seemed like the Phillies were kind of done with doing anything big, but they meant big free agent signings. They traded for Jesus Luzardo after they were just talking about the Max Kepler signing, and before that they did add a reliever to help the mix in Jordan Romano. But what do you think about Luzardo entering what is the second best rotation in baseball? I'll call it. I still give the Mariners number one, but for me, the Phillies look pretty strong as a number two. I know Dodger fans are probably going to jump in here. I would say this rotation has a little bit of an edge for me based on the durability, but I could be wrong here because the Dodgers rotation stuff-wise is crazy. But anyway, let's focus on this for a moment, and then we can rank it. Luzardo goes from the Marlins. There's two prospects, which you can learn more about if you watch our Hot Sheet show on the Baseball America YouTube channel later on. But the names are Starlin Caba and Amarion Boyd. Neither of them big power guys. Caba's the much bigger name here on many lists, a top 100 prospect in baseball. Good glove, good shortstop, good contact. Not sure if he's going to have the pop to be a star. But for the Phillies, Wheeler, Nola, Luzardo, Ranger Suarez, unless they trade him, Christopher Sanchez, and Andrew Painter might be the best pitching prospect in baseball who could show up at some point in that rotation this year.
Yeah, I'm with it. A lot of people will go back and talk about how bad Jesus Luzardo's season was this past year, the injuries. Well, I'm going to tell you something, Scott, that's real. Bad baseball is contagious. A bad atmosphere is contagious. As a player, when you're in one of those atmospheres where you don't feel like your team's trying to win, you feel like you're also out there and you have to do everything for them to win as far as a pitcher, going once every 5 days, feeling like you have to go out there and throw a no-no. I think when, with this move, and I've been screaming that somebody trade for him since last year, and then you give up, no offense, these two prospects who right now, prospects, we were told that means you haven't done anything lately, right? And then you get two guys who are very similar in their game. Like you said, bat the ball skills, decent defense, a lot of contact, and you have a chance to get a southpaw like Jesus Luzardo. I love this deal. One, he'll be extremely motivated to be on the field with that team, with those guys. We've seen that clubhouse. We've seen how live and how excited they are to compete. I think when you add this guy to the mix with those other southpaws, I think he's only going to build off of it. He's only going to get better. And like you said, now this is arguably the best rotation in baseball. The Dodgers are extremely deep with starters, but with just stuff-wise and history of health, you have to consider these guys one of the best in the game.
Yeah, good four-seam, two-seam, slider, changeup, four-pitch mix. He uses them all, and you're right. I mean, a couple of years ago, he was really shining. This past season, dealt with some injuries again, a couple of them. Season was cut pretty short. So you're talking about the 5 ERA, 66 and 2/3 innings. There's definitely been health issues. That's the risk you're taking here, Cam, is, 2023 is the only year that he went over 18 starts in his career, still young, also still in arbitration. He's only going to cost, it looks like, around $6 million, depending on how things go, either at ARB or when he settles. I mean, the value that he can provide if he is on the field and pitching for this team is a really good number 3 starter on a playoff team if he's clicking. So why not play the run prevention game if you're Philly? Because I think they're having trouble figuring out how much they can switch the position player group. They added Kepler. Okay. But I don't know how much else they're going to do. I know they've been shopping Alec Bohm. Most of those guys are high costs veterans. Some of them have no trade clauses. I think they looked around and were like, I don't know how much tinkering we can do. And this is a pretty good team. The concern is, Cam, I like the pitching. Will this lineup be able to hit really good pitching? In the regular season, I'm not worried. They should win 100 plus games again. But we've seen them flop in the playoffs last year, especially, and the year before was a big turnaround from the Diamondbacks pitching staff and Brent Strom to change up the game plan, and it completely froze them up. So it's the same roster you're going to roll out there. Can those veterans adjust and thrive in the postseason? They're big names, but we didn't see much from Trey Turner this past postseason. I'll pick a name like that. I mean, he's getting paid big bucks to be a dynamic X factor, and he just wasn't that for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they need to do a much better job of having quality at-bats up and down that lineup. I think when you look at the lineup, I almost hate to say it, but it's very much Yankees-based or Yankees of the past. It's feast or famine, right? If they beat you, if they win the home run total, they're going to win. But I think they have to find a way with all of that talent to maybe take a step back, right? How about more quality at-bats? How about putting more pressure on the starting pitcher? Let's try to get in the bullpen a little bit sooner because we're just stringing together quality at-bat after quality at-bat. You watch the Dodgers, right? They have big boppers, but there's so many quality at-bats up and down the lineup that really just stress you out as a pitching staff. And I think that's where, as a group, I don't know if it's one or two guys trying to be the hero, but I think they need to just play within themselves. And I think also, too, what you do is you go out and you add a guy like Jesus Luzardo. So you bolstered that rotation to where if the bats are slow, you got guys in there that can give you, another inning or two to get it going. So I like the move. You're absolutely right. That lineup has to step up when it's time, and that's in the clutch moments in the playoffs. We know what they're going to do during the regular season, but they have to find a way, to manufacture runs outside of the home run.
Yeah, that's my thing. Love the Phillies in the regular season, concerned about the lineup in the playoffs because
not
you
that
need
athletic
offense
when you
nowadays.
think about it.
No,
Not
older. That's
Alex,
what happens.
older, not athletic. So it's like, I think that's where, the struggles really show up, at the end of the season and postseason.
Yeah, I mean, the Mets certainly blitzed them. All right, we got a lot more to hit in terms of moves, but coming up next, Crush City territory host and the Athletics Houston Astros reporter Chandler Rome swinging by to talk about what happened there with the Astros last week, getting rejected by Arenado, signing up Walker, and really kicking up the first base market. All right, so we're hitting some not small moves, again, moves that would lead off the show on most days, but just in terms of time to fit it all into a 2-hour show. What do you think about Nathaniel Lowe landing with the Washington Nationals? They find their first baseman. Everyone's talking about them doing a Jason Worth-like signing, so Pete Alonso's name has come up. Now you can cross that off. I thought Bregman would fit really well here. I don't see them in play for anyone big to kind of welcome in the next era. Not to mention, real quick, because I watched some more Nats probably than most people this year, watching a lot of NL East. Robert Garcia is a really good talent, so that's going to be a nice ad for the Rangers. But anyway, what do you think about Lowe getting some vets into a Nationals team that needs to show some progress? And in my mind, Cam, if they were acting like the Nats of 4 or 5 years ago, they could be a playoff contender. They've got the core of young talent in place on the position player side, especially.
Yes, they do. I think they've also done a really good job of building a competitive rotation, right? When you look at the young starters they've got via trade, via their draft, I think they're doing a much better job. They've got some big arms in the bullpen. They have to be more consistent as far as, winning the race to strike one. I think falling behind has been a little bit of an issue for their bullpen in the past. I like this move. He's a veteran guy. I think he's a known leader in the clubhouse, and I think you need that, right? When you still have, guys like C.J. Abrams who are still growing as a professional, still learning how to be a professional. It's not really a needle mover, so to speak. I don't know. It's one of those moves where it's like it just kind of it's one of those I'm a big fan of Nathaniel Lowe, but when you have a chance to become more competitive, as the Nationals do, I was hoping they would go make a couple more moves, right? And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be the biggest name guy, but I think, like you said, they're in a good spot where you could, when you look at, the balance of powers where, the playing field was pretty level. I think this was the most level playing field that we had in years. Clearly the Dodgers, continue to do what they do, but I think you had a chance to go out and get better. We still have some offseason left. We're not done. I like this move.
Yeah, this
I like this
improves the
move.
team. Yeah, it's a safe
Absolutely.
move. Lowe's been an
There you
above
go.
average hitter every season. So it's a safe move.
I
It
think
makes
last
them
year
better
was his.
at first
Yeah,
base.
exactly.
Consistently
And he's
like
a
a
great
3-win
clubhouse guy.
player, 115-ish OPS plus most years, good clubhouse guy. Yeah, so I like most components here. I'm just like, if the Nats got one big name starter and a big position player, they could be in the playoffs next year, and they don't look like
Absolutely.
they're doing that. Here we go. Chandler Rome from The Athletic covering the Houston Astros joining us, and the newest member of the FT Network fam, Crush City Territories, available wherever you get your podcasts listen-wise, and also you can check it out on the YouTube channel. So first off, Chandler, congrats. Welcome to the FT fam officially. How has the reception been for the new show?
One commenter on the Apple Podcast Network said it was better than expected. So, with that sort of ringing endorsement, you should all run and subscribe, please. We're better than expected. But no, seriously, it's going well. I think Tyler and I work really well together, and we've had no shortage of storylines. We launched this thing at the exact right time with everything that's been swirling around this team the last 10 to 12 days. There's been no shortage of things to talk about.
And I'll throw this out there. There is a major former player that could be involved in the mix. Not going to give any names away, but it could join Chandler and Tyler Stafford at some point. But I think that's a good slogan for you to have. Crush City Territory. It's Astros coverage, ... better than expected. So make sure you check it out. All right, well, let's get into the details then. So Chandler, we'll go with the most recent development, and that was Jim Crane saying, "Oh, Nolan Arenado, you don't want to join the Houston Astros in 8 straight postseason appearances? Bye. We're going to not wait for you and sign Christian Walker instead and completely kickstart the first base market." So how surprised were you that they not only pivoted, but pivoted within, a day or two?
That's kind of becoming Dana Brown's MO as Astros general manager. Last year, the team announced last year that Kendall Graveman needed reconstructive shoulder surgery, was going to be out for the season. 3 days later, they signed Josh Hader. Nolan Arenado blocks a trade to the Astros. 2 days later, they agree to terms with Christian Walker. So Dana Brown has made the reputation of being aggressive, and when he knows what he wants, he kind of just goes and does it. Doesn't wait around. Wasn't surprised totally. You knew that they were going to have to address one corner infield spot drastically. Like whether it was first or third, they were going to have to go get a standout to play one of those two positions. And they did that with Christian Walker. His bat is what it is, and the bat is going to add a lot to this lineup in an immediate middle of the order bat. But I think they may have valued his glove maybe a little bit more even than his bat. He's won 3 straight Gold Gloves. Putting him on the right side of that infield will help, especially near Jose Altuve, whose defensive metrics have declined a little bit in the last couple of years. And, there is a wild card. The Astros hired Tony Perez Chica this offseason from the D-backs. He had been with the D-backs for 13 years, was their infield coach. And if you talk to people about Christian Walker's evolution, a lot of people credit Tony Perez Chica for Christian Walker's renaissance as a defender. So he's going to have a familiar face here right off the bat. Will hit kind of in the middle of that Astros lineup, but don't sleep on the glove. The glove is really, really something that they coveted, especially for a team that going into next year, its top 2 starters are going to be Framber Valdez, presuming he's still on the team, and Hunter Brown. They both induced ground balls at least a 50% clip last year. This infield has got to be good. They've got to have an elite infield behind those 2 pitchers, and they took a step toward that with Christian Walker.
Okay, Chandler. So you talk about Dana Brown. He seems like he's step in step with ownership. You bring in Isaac Paredes, who I think personally, I know a lot of Astro fans are going to be upset, but he's actually tailor-made for Minute Maid Park. After going to Tampa and really opening up his pull side, power, I think he's going to fit in great. And then you add Christian Walker. Well, you still have a hole to fill. You don't have Tucker, and I still believe the outfield, they have some holes as well. What else does Dana Brown want, to go out and try to fill those holes as well? Because you don't want Jordan out there playing left field every day. What is it? What are his plans? What does he want?
Yeah, Joe Espada said at the winter meetings that he wants to cut back on how much Jordan Alvarez plays in left field, and that was before they traded Kyle Tucker. I can imagine that's still the plan, but also, the way I've been told and from what I'm hearing, I don't expect any more significant big dollar additions to this team. I think they're still being very mindful of where they are with the luxury tax, even after bringing aboard Christian Walker. Depending on what outside approximation you look at, they're right at, maybe 3-4 million under that first threshold. Remember, they paid the luxury tax last year. So from what I understand, there is an inclination that they do want to stay under it to reset and maybe, spend some more after that. But, they are still shopping Ryan Presley, their setup man, who's got a $14 million salary in 2025. He has a full no trade clause, so he's got full autonomy that he can pick where he wants to go if that even happens. I do think if they're able to offload Presley and some of that salary, I do think you could see them get involved in the outfield market. But as it stands right now, I wouldn't expect big dollar additions. I would expect guys maybe on minor league deals with invites to big league camp. I would expect a lot of depth signings like that in hopes that they can create competition in spring training and, to see if any of those guys can break camp. And then, two prospects that I'll talk about. Zach DeZenzo is a guy that I think they're going to give a look at in left field. I don't know he'll be the permanent guy. I don't know that he'll get everyday reps. I think left field is going to be a revolving door for this team. But I think Zach DeZenzo is a prospect to watch that if he makes the team out of camp, could certainly be a guy that plays a lot of left field. And then Jacob Melton was formerly their top prospect. He's since been replaced by Cam Smith, but he's their second overall prospect. More of a natural center fielder. He, like DeZenzo, is going to come to big league camp. If he shows out and if he demands a spot on the team, I could see them, turning to him and say, one of those outfield spots is yours. So a lot of moving parts with their outfield, but I don't expect them to bring in any more kind of established big name, big dollar free agents to address the outfield.
So the big question for now, with Houston kind of chilling for the rest of the offseason, is this team the best ball club in the American League West? And is it still capable of riding the American League postseason to a World Series appearance? I thought they were just as, if not a better team than the Yankees this past season. Obviously, they didn't get to face them in the playoffs. They were upset by the Tigers in that first round. Tucker and Bregman are massive losses, Chandler. You know it better than anyone. Paredes is no Bregman, but a very nice big league regular who should crush the Crawford boxes. And then I'm looking at first base, going back to where we started here in Christian Walker. I mean, that was a brutal position for them the past couple of years. Christian Walker, I know he's 34, but I think he's going to be significantly better for them on offense and on defense. And I don't know if the Astros are going to skip a beat that much. Like, I still think this team can win 95-ish plus games and be a threat in the playoffs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think two things can be true, Scott. First of all, this is a weaker team. I mean, they traded their best player. They traded Kyle Tucker, and they aren't going to have Alex Bregman, who Gold Glove winner. I know the start to his season last year was not good, but in the second half, there were very few better third basemen in baseball than Alex Bregman in the second half of last year. So this is going to be a weaker team. However, within the AL West, and we saw last year, the Astros started 12-24 and still managed to win this division. This is not a good division. I know the Rangers are making some moves to maybe reestablish themselves, maybe with a full season of DeGrom. Things get a little better in Arlington. The Mariners, until they spend money, I'm not going to I know their pitching is unbelievable, but you saw last year that good pitching can only take you so far. And then the other two, they're going to try. But again, I still think this team has the best roster in the division. It is a weaker team than last year, just given what they've traded away and what they've parted with. But this is totally a team that can still win the American League West. And that was something Dana Brown even acknowledged at the winter meetings before they traded Kyle Tucker. He was asked in his suite the first night of the winter meetings, do you think you guys can still win the American League West without one of Tucker or Valdez? And he said yes. He said their projections said that was possible, and that's what they're going to try to do. So, yeah, I think this team can definitely still win the American League West.
All right, Chandler. Well, thank you for the insight. Hope you have a great holiday. And again, welcome to the FT Network fam. So everyone, if you want a little Houston Astros coverage with Chandler and with Tyler, you know what to do. There it is. Nice little intro there. And also, I mean, we love the rocket emojis, the spaceship emojis there. Crush City Territory is the show with Chandler and Tyler and maybe someone else soon. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Chandler, thanks again. Enjoy the holiday break, and we'll talk in 2025.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Happy holidays.
All right, FT fam, we'll be right back. All right, let's try to get to some questions here too in these breaks while we're talking to the YouTube fam. And please subscribe. I mean, if you're watching at this point, you don't subscribe to FT on YouTube, you're crazy, but also on Apple and Spotify, so you can listen to us on the go. Give us a nice little rating review. Also, if there's a certain guest you want to hear from, we can try and make some requests. So let us know in the review section on Apple Podcasts. Anyway, I see some questions and some talk about Buehler and the Dodgers. For example, there's a fan that asked, did the Dodgers not want to give their Walker 20 plus million for a season? I mean, clearly not necessarily. And I did read, I don't remember who it was, but it was someone good, some notes about how the Dodgers didn't want to put him in that qualifying offer abyss. They wanted to give him a chance at a really nice, clean free agency. And that's something the Dodgers can do more so than most teams, because Cam, if they gave him a qualifying offer, I don't know if he would have accepted it. My guess is no, although he basically gets what the qualifying offer is worth. And it just makes it easier for him to sign with a team that doesn't use the excuse of using a draft pick. So props to the Dodgers. I actually think this is best for all parties, as crazy as it sounds, for him to show that he can get it done elsewhere and just, say thrive in a high pressure environment in Boston. It is a hitter's ballpark. It is a highly pressurized situation. If he thrives this year and stays healthy, he is going to cash out big time. Not that the Dodgers couldn't do that, but the Dodgers have way more rotation options, and they also are so concerned about making sure that guys are fit for the postseason that I think Walker Buehler needs to just eat for 2025 and show everyone that he could be a number 1 or number 2 starter.
You just gave me goosebumps. There are not many organizations that do deals in good faith. This was also like a reward to Walker Buehler. Man, you know what? You helped us do something extremely special. We know what you've been through. We also have a ton of rotation depth now. Like you said, I just think this is one of those moves where, it was almost a reward for Walker Buehler. Here you go. You've earned it. You've been through a lot. And you have to give the Dodgers a lot of credit for doing business in good faith. And that's good for the juju too, Scott, right? That's what the Dodgers are doing. They're trying to do good business to continue that good vibe, the good aura. So I like it, man. I like it. Good things happen when you do good business.
Yeah, karma moves. And also for the Dodgers, if you think about it, they got a lot of value out of Walker Buehler during his time there. They didn't give him the big contract, and he helped them win a couple World Series. To me, the comp I always use for his competitiveness is Madison Bumgarner. The next version of that in terms of the competitiveness in the playoffs. All right, here we go. We're back on FT, and we're running through the first base market, which went crazy this weekend. After Christian Walker signed for his 3 years and his $60 million, and he gets $20 a year, there was a domino effect. And it started with Paul Goldschmidt, 1 year, a little over $12 million, goes to the New York Yankees. It sounded like the Yankees were lightly in on Christian Walker, but a little bit afraid of the draft pick compensation and the price tag. So they pivot to another veteran who's actually older. He's 37 years old, coming off a very down season for his standards compared to what you look at a couple seasons ago. Still very good glove over at first base. You see the Brian Hoke tweet. Does this turn into his buddy Nolan Arenado going over to third base in a trade with the Yankees and the Cardinals, and then Jazz Chisholm moving over to second base. It sounds like Arenado would be more interested in something like this. Of course, a deal has to happen. The Yankees have to be interested. But anyway, once Goldie signed and set the market, it's like all of these first basemen making around the same money, 12-ish for next year, moved around. We talked about Lowe ending up with the Nationals. Josh Naylor gets traded from the Guardians to the Diamondbacks. The Guardians quickly pivot, or probably already had the deal in place for Carlos Santana at a similar price. So we can start with Goldie, but what did you think of the whole first base market basically getting done, or 80% done in a matter of hours?
Yeah, I think this is great, right? I think if you look at where the St. Louis Cardinals have been the last few years, a guy like Goldie, they can say what they want. They've been in a rebuild. You can call it what you want to. They have not been the St. Louis Cardinals of the past. So when you think about a guy like Goldie at 37, I'm a firm believer. My favorite players were, play some of their best baseball in their mid to late 30s. And I think Goldie is a guy, when you talk about the first base position, I think a guy that can be reinvigorated with the energy of the Bronx, right? With what the Yankees are trying to do year to year. It's a World Series of bust for the Yankees. So I think when you put that type of energy, that type of onus around Paul Goldschmidt, when you put a Aaron Judge around Paul Goldschmidt, Anthony Volpe, some of these type of guys, I think their visions align and what they want. I think it's a great fit. And then it's a year deal, right? So if it doesn't work out, if it looks like Father Time won, then you pivot and you move on. So, I think this is a great deal of a veteran, a winner, and a leader.
Also, if it doesn't work out at all, there will be first baseman available at the trade deadline coming up for the Yanks. So there is upside, of course, because it's a former MVP. I mean, yeah, the age, the bat speed, it definitely concerns you when you get to that level of your career, and you've seen the decline the past couple seasons. But he did have a much better second half than first half. Was doing some damage against lefties, cut the strikeouts down, showed a little bit more pop.
Yep.
Still hits the ball really hard, and
Yes.
knows the zone for the most part. A little more chase, but knows the zone. I mean, and with all of that being said, when we're like, man, is Goldie losing it? The bat was still about league average for OPS plus. It was 98.
Yep, and let me say this too when you talk about the Yankees aura, because I've been there. When you talk about the chase was up a little bit, the Yankees do a great job with their offensive players. They do like a monthly meeting, and they tell you, hey, your chase percentage is this, your end zone swing percentage is this, you barreled this many balls up. So they give you a good idea of how to get you back locked in if you get a little bit off track, right? Okay, I've been chasing a little bit too much, or I haven't been looking at my strength a little bit, as much. So I think they do a really good job. And I don't know what the Cardinals do, but I think Paul Goldschmidt is going to love being in the Yankees clubhouse with the analytic department they have. They also have one of the better analytic departments. I know we talk about the Dodgers and we talk about the Red Sox and Tampa Bay. The Yankees do a great job of bringing out the best in guys. And I think, and I love Anthony Rizzo, but I think this is an even better move. I think he still has a little bit more baseball left than Riz. And so I really like this move. And those are just the little things that we don't talk about that I think will take Paul Goldschmidt to another level. And his approach is tailor-made for that ballpark. He has always been a fastball, middle, backside, homer situation, pulling, breaking balls. So I think his approach is going to fit that stadium perfectly.
I'll tell you, the concern for me in the Yankees lineup right now is on base percentage. If you look at most of the numbers from last season, they're low. Besides Judge, you still only got, I think, one player that had an on base percentage above 325. Belly was 325. I think the only guy above 325 is Judge. Obviously, Soto's gone. So there's just a lot of low on base percentage guys. I mean, it's okay. It's Yankee Stadium. Yeah, there's swing and miss. So I don't know. There's a lot of downside in that lineup. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, some guys are going to progress. They're still, a pretty older veteran. I mean, they got a little more athletic, of course, with Cody Bellinger. I liked that move. Goldie is definitely getting up there in age. You're not getting a super athlete there at first.
Scott, is there a world, hypothetically, where, and I keep saying he's on the block, and I don't know how true it is, but a Luis Ariz would be like tailor-made for a Yankees lineup. And I don't know if that would mean they would have to move off Jazz or somebody else, or stick Jazz at third and let Luis play some second. Listen, I know the metrics say that his best position is first base, but listen, the guy came up an infielder. I think he could play second base as good as Glaber, who I love. But I'm just thinking of, like you said, to add some length to that lineup. It's a little bit more contact, a little bit more on base percentage. Just something that continues to pop in my head. A guy like that would be perfect. And oddly, he continues to get shot for some reason.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit late last week. Todd Father picked him as, one of the players mentioned in trade rumors that he just doesn't understand. Kratz put it well last week. He said, you love what you see when he's on your team during the season. In the offseason, the front offices play the wins above replacement projection game, and he just doesn't rate well there. It's a guy who is somewhat one-dimensional, right? He's not a runner. He's not a fielder. He's not a pop guy, but he gets on and he makes contact. So I like him. If it's my team, it gives me a little bit of the old school approach of having one guy that does something differently from everyone else. Can you have a team full of Luis Ariz players? No, but I agree with you. I think it'd be an interesting fit. I don't think the Yankees front office would be into him just based on the glove. I think they're going to be like, hey, we had defensive issues. This is not the guy for that, even though we do like having a little more contact. A guy who should get on base, 35-ish% of the time. But let me take you to a couple of the other moves. Here's one that I personally don't like. Carlos Santana has been a good player in the league for a while. He's had some ups and downs kind of later in his career. He's 39 years old. The same amount of money for the Guardians for him versus Josh Naylor. I have a problem with that. And I know they're able to platoon him. Santana was bopping lefties last year, and you can have Manzardo do some platoon action, utilize first base and DH. Santana just won a Gold Glove. He was exceptional there at first base. But if you're playing the age curve game, man, I'll take Josh Naylor in his prime coming off his first 30-plus homer season. Plus, knowing what he does within that group, he is the ignition, the spark plug.
Absolutely.
He's not the same personality, but you know what I'm saying with the Willie Adames. Every day you're like excited to be around this guy. It's a character. So I think it's a great move for the Arizona Diamondbacks to replace Christian Walker. And I think it's going to hurt for the Guardians.
I agree. One thing about Josh Naylor, and I tweeted this, I don't know when I tweeted a few days ago. You can like him or hate him, but one thing he is he's the ultimate competitor. He shows up, he posts, and he comes ready to play for his teammates every day. And he's got a little bit of batshit crazy as well. You need guys like that, right? And I'm going to be real with you. When you look at this trade, you can almost say the Diamondbacks needed a little bit of that little bit of that meanness, that nastiness. And Josh Naylor brings that, right? Like, he's the guy that I want in my clubhouse because he'll tell you, pull your head out of your ass and let's go. Come on, guys. Like, I think you need that. And he's also going to take accountability. So when you talk about the age game, I love this move for the Diamondbacks. I thought Pete Alonso would have been a great fit for the D-backs until they made this move. But I'm with you. I wasn't crazy about it. I love Carlos Santana, right? Team veteran. You know what he's going to be in the clubhouse as a leader. But it's just, this was such a Cleveland Guardians move to me. You know what I mean? I don't think they got better with this move by any means.
I think they really feel like they got better, and I think they're wrong. I think they plug into platoon action with Manzardo and Santana at times. Plus, yes, Santana is a better glove than Naylor. I think his glove, just based on age, will probably tick down a little bit. This is probably the best season he's ever had at first. And Naylor's glove, it gets hit sometimes on defensive metric. That's probably why, if you look at the wins above replacement number, Santana was a 3 this past season for Fangraphs WAR, and 2.3 was the number for Naylor. And I'm like, yeah, that's why it's not the all-encompassing stat for me.
Yeah,
I'll take Josh Naylor over Carlos Santana for next season.
Glove.
Who is?
I said Juan Soto was also in the running for a Gold Glove. Not to pick on Juan Soto. I'm just saying, sometimes, like, to your point, those metrics can be a little bit skewed because we also watch, right? We use our eyes sometimes, and, the eyes don't lie.
And for me, the Diamondbacks gave up Slade Ciccone, who, hasn't pitched well so far in the bigs. And they gave up a draft pick that it's a comp pick. It should be in the 70-75 range. So I thought that was a great move to pick up the pace for the loss of Christian Walker. The Diamondbacks did lose a crucial piece from last year's team that I don't think we talked about enough this past season. Jock Peterson signs with the Texas Rangers. So they trade Lowe away. We covered that earlier. And Jake Berger is going to play first base, right? And then Jock Peterson can handle some DH action. Dude, he was insane last year. Obviously, you got to put him in the right spots. Yeah, you're right. The last 2 years, Jock Peterson's numbers have been off the charts. if you look what he's bringing to the table, it's pop. It's really, really good quality ABs. I mean, he was thriving as a designated hitter with the Diamondbacks, plugging him in against right-handed pitching. His overall OPS plus number this past season was 151. That is elite.
Crazy. And listen, I remember Jock Peterson when he was in AAA about to come up with the Dodgers, and he was stealing 40 and hitting 40, right? I'm talking about athlete, just wheels, could do everything. Well, now, I will say a lot of times the good Lord puts people on this earth, Scott, and they can just hit, right? Jock Peterson was born to hit a baseball. Now he's in a role that he absolutely thrives in, that he relishes. He loves not going out there and playing left field anymore, not playing on defense. If you telling me Jock Peterson, all he has to do is show up and hit, and you get him for that, literally, the Rangers lineup got so much better. I love this for both teams. The Rangers still have a lot to do, but Jock Peterson, like you said, the last 2 years has been an elite hitter. And what he does, he makes hitters around him better. The little things that go unnoticed are the conversations. I remember being in camp with the Cubs, and all we did was talk hitting. Like, the guy loved to talk hitting. He loved to talk baseball. He loves the game. So those little nuances, they rub off and make guys better around him because he knows how to hit and he understands what pitchers are trying to do. So those little things that you can't measure, that's what the Rangers also get in Jock Peterson.
Do you think Texas bounces back as a ball club? Because this was one of the sneaky components of the underperformance this past season. I mean, you always talk about the World Series hangover. It existed again. You like to link it to pitching. The Rangers' offense cratered. I mean, they had a top 3 offense in baseball a couple seasons ago, and it stepped up in the postseason as they kind of barely made the playoffs, but then they really found their stride. The offense dipped off this past season. So I think Jock's just consistent, staying on the field. Mm-hmm. He knows his role. He's gotten better with age, but he's not a guy that should be hitting any decline yet. I got to look up what he is. I think my guess is maybe 31 years old is my guess for Jock.
And we're talking about the DH. He's off his feet. Yeah. Yep. 32-year-old DH. I mean, he's left-handed Billy Butler right now. Just go out and rake.
Do you think the Rangers are going to be better? Like, how do you stack up the AL West right now with the Astros, Rangers, Mariners, A's, and Angels?
I just look at what the Astros doing and the conversation we just had with Chandler. All the moves that Dana Blake are making, he's letting me know that he feels like the Astros are still the favorite to win that division, right? You talk about the lack there of offense that Seattle, has. The injuries, we don't know, what to think about the rotation when you talk about the Rangers rotation, right? Just a ton of injury health. I don't know how much better they got with this. Like you said, a little bit more consistent at the DH spot. But I'm with you. I think they still have a lot of health issues. We never know how many games Corey Seager's going to play. We don't know what's going to happen with Adolis. He's been pretty good at posting, but I think they still have a lot of holes and a lot of needs. So, I don't think they've got too much better. Now, I think that's hence why the Astros haven't been in any hurry to keep their best player or re-sign one of their best guys.
I'm not going to let the Mariners get away with doing nothing so far. No. A lot of Mariners fans that I interact with on social media are like, there goes another first baseman that is not joining Seattle. They're like, who are we going to get? When's our turn? I think they're dealing with massive payroll crunch issues right now. I mean, the front office there is battling to figure out what they can do when they have to stay in this same slim margin. You have really good players, some of them hitting arbitration, getting more expensive. They had a bad offense for most of last season. You can't just pick it up for the last, couple months of the year. They still had the swing and miss issues. I think that offense needs a ton of work. They really haven't even started yet. There's a lot of offseason left to go, but I think that team right now is on the hot seat in terms of a front office. They're going to do stuff. It's Jerry Dipoto, but I think they have to get really crafty, and I think they're likely to trade Luis Castillo as part of what they need to put together because they can't hit for example, some Mariners fans that still don't understand that there are severe budget restrictions there. You're not signing Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is not going to play in Seattle unless you overpay for him. And this is a team that definitely cannot afford to pick up a player like that based on what ownership gives them. So they're going to get creative again. They did that last year. It did not work. And we'll see what they can do this time around. They're going to have to, I think, for the first time, sacrifice an arm to create more offense.
you got plenty. They've done it. The one thing they've done a great job at is developing young arms. Listen, sometimes you got to give up a little bit to get a little bit, and I think that's the situation they're in. And you talk about getting creative. I'm just gonna be real too. I think creative for them is they need to be looking at getting more athletic, right? I think maybe put the homer. I know this might sound crazy. Put the homer on the back burner. Go get guys who put the ball in play at a high rate, that are athletic, that can use that field, right? Use those gaps, use that division. And I think that's where you start to make a shift. I think they're trying to go in, and I love Teoscar, but Teoscar didn't fit that part, even though he finished well before his free agency year. I think you have to get guys that are more conducive and more consistent at making constant contact. Hence Alex Bregman, not saying that, but like those type of guys, Elisa Rise, Alex Bregman, guys who don't punch out, guys who put the ball in play. That's where they're going to have to find some creativity to, be relevant in that division.
3 names I'd keep an eye on for the Mariners, depending on how they execute trades. Alec Bohm, Tristan Casas, and
Yes.
Luis Arraez actually fits there.
Yes.
Sacrifice little Diab first and let the guy eat. Obviously, they need some power too, but they've got some power threats in the outfield with some swing and miss,
Yes.
like Julio Rodriguez, Randy Arozarena. So we'll see. We'll spend plenty of time on the Mariners. We're actually going to talk about the Red Sox. We'll see what Chris Cotillo thinks about the status of the infield for them and the big addition of Walker Buehler. We'll talk to him next.
Love those moves to Seattle, Scotty.
What do you think? Arraez and Bohm for first and third.
I'm cool. Go with the other. Go with Casas and
Casas.
Arraez. I like that. I love that. Those two right there, I would love that.
Well, the problem is, how are you putting both of those players in a lineup?
Luis Arraez is going DH, and they both lefties. I think if you look at it, we've become accustomed to, like, we've seen it. Luis Arraez, they will use him as a DH. They will use him as a first baseman. So I think, I just think you have to be okay with that. But man, you need that type of length in the lineup. Like you do. Mm-hmm. You couldn't have been more spot on with those moves. And you have arms coming, guys. Like literally, they've done a great job of developing pitching. Continue to trust the blueprint.
Who do you like best out of the first basemen that we just covered that are all costing in a similar range? So take Christian Walker out of there because he's clearly an echelon above. He's costing almost double.
As far as with Seattle?
Well, no. Out of the 4 that just moved, right? So you have Naylor to the Diamondbacks, you have Lowe to the Nationals, you have Goldschmidt to the Yankees, and you have Santana to the Guardians. Of those 4, who do you think has the best year coming up in 2025?
Unpopular opinion. I like Josh Naylor more than all of them. I know Christian Walker. I love his age. I do still think Christian Walker has 3 good years in him. I think again,
and I'm saying without Walker. Yeah, take Walker out.
Without Walker.
So those other 4.
I'm literally I was the whole time, I'm gonna be real with you, I was pushing for a Yankees trade for Josh Naylor. Like him in the Bronx, bro, like people, they would have loved him. Like they would have his intensity, his fire. Could you imagine him after a game winning hit in New York, just literally like raging? They would love that. So I've been a big Josh Naylor fan this whole offseason when I started to hear about him being shopped. I think the Arizona Diamondbacks definitely won this offseason at the first base position. That's just my opinion.
I'm with you. For that group, for that mid-tier
group. I
like Walker
I would
a
have
lot.
went after him for the control. How many years of control does he have left?
Who?
Naylor.
No, they're all free agents. These guys, that's why I paired them all together. So just for one season, I'll go with you. I'll go Naylor 1. I'll go Lowe 2 because the floor is high. He's consistent. Yep. I'll go Goldie 3 because I think the ceiling's higher for him with the bat rebounding than Santana. And I'll go Santana 4. Out of those 4, that's how I would rank it in terms of who's going to be, the best fit and most productive with their particular ball clubs coming up.
I'm locked in with you.
All right, Mass Live's Chris Cotillo getting some holiday coverage going here right before we maybe break. Who knows? I don't know at this point because we had a Sunday bonanza and really the last few days have been crazy. But Chris, thanks for joining us and let's get right to biz. Walker Buehler, the latest to join the Boston Red Sox rotation. Do you like this move, and do you like this rotation now?
Yeah, I do. I think that they got their number one in Crochet. That kind of means that there's less pressure, I think, on Walker Buehler to come in and be the number one. You saw Tanner Houck do that for a large portion of last year. You saw Crochet become one of the better pitchers in baseball last year. So to me, it's kind of Buehler, not necessarily a bonus because I think he'll have an important role in this rotation, but a guy who has been there, done that. If you look at the rest of the group, not a lot of postseason experience, not a lot of that veteran leadership. Giolito's obviously a guy who's been around, but only a couple of postseason starts. I think they're going to rely on Buehler for, hopefully, if they can get to October, to be a horse at that point. And I think it's a good fit for him, just in a place where he can come in, be a veteran leader, still be in a big market, knows how to win, and hopefully for him, reestablish his value. 21 million, no one's going to sneeze at, but this is about, hitting the market next year, maybe getting a mega deal. We saw what happened, not great coming out of Tommy John surgery last year, and then pretty good to finish in the postseason. So I think it makes sense, on a lot of levels for the Red Sox. And now, as you said, it's a very deep group. They don't have to rely on Houck and Bayo and Crawford to be, 1, 2, and 3. Those guys can be, maybe 3, 4, and 5, and Giolito's coming back and some other guys. So it's a lot better of a group than it was, I think, this time last year. It's a lot deeper of a group than it was at the end of the year, too.
Do you think there's more coming, wherever that is, in terms of spending? Because if you add up the actual spending they've done this offseason, it's not crazy. And I know they were talking to Juan Soto. So if we're supposed to believe that they were going to fork up $600+ million or $700+ million for Juan Soto, then are we to believe that the Red Sox would still potentially go after either an outfielder like a Teoscar Hernandez, an infielder like Alex Bregman, or maybe even another starter or big name reliever like a Tanner Scott to help this ball club? Because, I know Buehler's 20+ mil, Crochet costs nothing. So I think there's still work to do for them and payroll to spend away.
Yeah, well, there's no full throttle promise, so they don't have that to meet, this time around. Been there, done that. But they did say, they were going to be convicted and try to go, more aggressive. And I think we've seen that, Crochet, Buehler, Patrick Sandoval on a 2-year deal, Aroldis Chapman, Justin Wilson, everything on the pitching side. They said, Sam Kennedy told the Globe earlier this year that they expected to go and were willing to go over that, first CBT threshold. They haven't done that in a few years. I think that's still in play. They have 24, 25 million, left to play under that. I think they'd be willing to go over. It's not a hard cap. They're definitely going to have a higher payroll than they did a year ago. To me, Scott, I've been saying this since like October 15th. Teoscar Hernandez is a perfect fit in every way. He balances out the lineup. He'd be great at Fenway. He's been incredible at Fenway throughout his career. He's always wanted to play at Fenway, wanted to play for the Red Sox. And if he doesn't go to the Dodgers, I would guess that they're going to try to get aggressive on that just because he fits so well. I do think Alex Bregman's still in play. Obviously, some moving parts. Do you put him at second? Do you move Rafael Devers, which they don't seem crazy about? So I'd say in that order, Hernandez 1, Bregman 2 as the possibilities. I think that is the big need. This offense was okay last year, but Tyler O'Neill led them in homers. He's not walking through that door again. And I think another relief arm could help, maybe see how the market shakes out. They have Chapman. They have Wilson, as I said, locked in from the left side. I know that handedness, doesn't determine everything nowadays, but to me, that means somebody like Hoffman or Estevez or Kirby Yates might be a better fit just to give you a high octane righty instead of Scott, and Scott's going to cost more than all of them. In terms of starting rotation, it's tough to imagine they keep adding just because they do have those 6, 7 guys you can trust, plus 3 guys in AAA that should be in the mix, and Criswell, Fitz, and Priester. So to me, if I'm them, Teoscar Hernandez is plan 1, plan 1A, plan 1B. So far, doesn't seem like they've been the most aggressive team on him. I'm not sure why. But him fitting into that outfield mix, getting a lot of play at DH when you can't count on Yoshida, to me, he's the cleanest fit, and it's always been that case.
Sometimes
Chris,
when we're looking at off,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Cam.
I'm sorry, my bad, Scott. I wanted to piggyback off of that because you make the comment that they're not as sold as some people may say on moving Rafael Devers. So that gets me to wonder, what is all the Tristan Casas talk about? What will they be trying to get to move him? And then, you also mentioned, Hernandez in the outfield. Well, I actually like the young outfield they have Where does that actually fit for you? Because I actually just don't see Teo fitting right there. Like,
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, they haven't moved Willie Abreu, which I think a lot of people were thinking they would. Rafael is a guy that is a really good center fielder
mm-hmm.
defensively. You're going to want him out there. Obviously, Duran became one of the best players in baseball last year. And Roman Anthony's the number one prospect in baseball, and you expect him to be up pretty, soon into this season. So to me, Teo getting at bats at DH makes a lot of
Mm-hmm.
sense. The problem for the Red Sox, of course, is that they have Masataka Yoshida. He's under contract for 3 more years. He has very little trade value, but it's just he's another guy who is left-handed, did not hit lefties at all last year, and a guy that I think, they'd be better off without him on the roster at this point. It's tough to swallow that money in the trade or swallow that, deal in a DFA, which would have been, crazy to say, even midway through last season. But you just look at it, and I think O'Neill would have fit the roster a lot better last year with Yoshida not on the team, just in terms of being able to get him off his feet, DHing him, and I think that's what they're going to try to do. It's too bad Teoscar Hernandez can't play second base. That would obviously be a place where he could fit. On the Casas situation, I've always been against trading him just because I don't think they've seen the best from Tristan Casas yet. I think at his best, he can be an elite player, an elite run producer, and a guy that you can build a lineup around, which they don't even have to, right? Because they have Devers and they have that guy already. But they'd be trading him at a point where his value is a little lower after missing 4 months. I think they were shopping him in pitching trades as they were Abreu. I've never thought it was particularly likely he's going to move, and I don't think he will now.
So, Chris, how do you stack this team up in the AL East right now with what the Yankees obviously brought a strong year and that led them to a World Series appearance? I know the Red Sox are sick of losing, but are they improving enough in your mind to feel confident about them being a serious playoff contender, if not division contender, coming into next season? Because I also don't want to discount what the Orioles bring to the table, even though they're not doing a ton yet this offseason. There's still a lot of offseason to go. And I would even expect the Rays to be better just based on how many pitchers are coming back for them.
Yeah, and the Rays are always good no matter what, no matter who they have on the roster. Toronto's got, still that core. Vladdy's last year potentially under control. They could be dangerous even if they did flop last year. I mean, the division's always going to be good. You're always going to have teams, doing a lot. I think the Red Sox, if you look at it from a talent perspective, they're more talented than they were a year ago, just with Crochet, just with Buehler in the mix. Even if they haven't really changed the offense around much, I still think there's probably a gap with the Yankees. I mean, Max Fried headlining that rotation. Some of the guys they've gotten, Devin Williams, obviously, Bellinger, Goldschmidt over the weekend. Juan Soto's a lot to replace, but they have gotten some big names there. So, anything can happen once the games start, getting underway. And we've seen, wild card contention be something the Red Sox have flirted with the last couple of years. With so many teams making the playoffs, their goal is to get in. Their goal is to compete for the division. But they have to see, does Roman Anthony become a star in year one? Does Christian Campbell become a star this early? They obviously traded Kyle Teal, but what can they get out of Marcelo Meyer potentially late? Can Trevor Story rebound and have a good year? Can Duran, stay at the level he was last year? There are some question marks, and I think that's why they're probably not done. They're probably a couple big moves or one big move and maybe a middling one away from, having their finalized roster. But I definitely think, we joke about full throttle and we've talked about it on the show before, but they've done a pretty good job identifying their needs this winter, going after them. Did they get Soto? No. Did they get Fried? No. But they probably get the best player in the trade market. And now they got Buehler, only for 1 year, but a bounce back candidate. Chapman should help the bullpen. And again, they're one bat away, I think, from me looking at it and saying, this was a pretty aggressive offseason. They are a lot better. And they do have the young core. This is a team that's built on the homegrown guys, from the rotation guys of Bayo, Houck, and Crawford, from Casas at first and Devers at third, and, Anthony and Campbell and Meyer. I always want to loop Teal in there because we've been saying those names together for about 3 years, but he's gone. They're relying on those guys to come up, help, the core that they already have in place. And if you watched them all last year, despite finishing 81 and 81 and falling apart down the stretch, on an individual basis, it didn't feel like they were that far off. There was a lot of guys who took steps forward. And I think they expect that to be kind of the baseline of real contention next year.
Let's finish with this because you've mentioned the young guys a few times. Are we discounting the impact that they can make in 2025? What do you foreshadow for some of the youngsters, like say Roman Anthony and what he can bring to the table, and also making sure that there is space for some of those players if they are ready based on the upside. Again, looking at the Orioles, because I think there's some comps sometimes with Baltimore and with Boston rising through again in terms of their farm system. Sometimes I think Baltimore's the way that they've developed their prospects now in the big leagues has been difficult at times because it's hard to bring them up and then find playing time for a contender. So how do you think they're going to thread the needle there?
Yeah, I think when you look at Christian Campbell, that second base job is for the taking. That's partly why I don't understand the Alex Bregman pursuit that much, just because you're adding another guy. You already have Story under control. Obviously, you have Devers and Casas in the infield. That is why that's a little confusing to me. It is a big ask to turn over a position to a rookie who was drafted, 2 years ago and just had a crazy helium year in 2024. With Anthony, it's a crowded outfield mix. We've touched on that. I think in a perfect world, Rafaela is a super utility guy, and you roll with, maybe Abreu, Anthony, and Duran as your starting outfield. Very left-handed heavy, yes, but that's just kind of who they have. I do think Anthony and Campbell should be up in the first half. They got to AAA. They both performed really well. I would have said Teal would have been in that boat too if they didn't trade him. Meyer, I think at this point, is a little bit behind just because he's had injuries in the last 2 years prematurely and he didn't reach AAA at the end of last year. But the idea that they have the guys they have in the major leagues, the additions they have, and they still have, 3 top 25, top 30 prospects, real blue chippers who haven't debuted left, I think is what really excites the fan base. And, it's tough to ever expect, MVP caliber performances from guys in their first year. But, Campbell burst onto the scene last year with one of the great offensive seasons we've seen in the minors in a while. Anthony's a guy who is prospect pedigree through the roof and has checked every box since he's, been drafted. So I think the expectations are high for those guys, but at the same time, they are insulated in some of those spots, right? Where if Anthony struggles and needs to go down, you do have Abreu and Rafaela and Duran and Russ Snyder and some of these other guys on the roster. Or if Campbell struggles, you have some other options. So I think they're trying to make sure that the pressure's not all on those guys when they come up, but also recognizing they think they're going to be a huge part, if not the featured part of the core going forward.
Yeah, they've done a great job at developing some of those guys. Obviously, yes, one of them turns into a trade and a huge arm, and one of my favorite moves of the offseason in Garrett Crochet because of the value you're getting and how cheap he is and how he could be a one for them. But yeah, it's a good move from Boston here. They're getting some gamers. Crochet's a gamer. Buehler is certainly a gamer, one of the best in the postseason in the last several years. Chris, thank you so much for the time, dude. Appreciate you hopping on right before the holiday. Red Sox keeping you busy. Everyone give Chris a follow at Chris Cotillo on Twitter. There you can find his podcast and also, of course, all of his articles. Podcast is called Fenway Rundown. Chris, thanks again, man. Good to see you.
Thanks, guys. You too.
All right, FT fam. Be right back. There we go. All right, let's do this. BetMGM Futures, Leo helping us out with the 2025 Oakland A's win total right now. Look at it moving up a little bit here. 70.5 is the number for Oakland right now. Thoughts?
They win 70 games under Cots. They're going to be motivated, man. You know what? They're going to take advantage of playing in Sacramento. They're going to take advantage of everybody coming in. Oh, we got to go play in Sac, and they're going to take advantage. I'm saying this is a good year for the Cots to get 70 plus.
Yeah, I'm into it right now. And what you always try and do is find value based on what you think is going to happen next. The A's have to spend a little bit more money. So their offseason's not done. They're already
trying.
have gotten themselves two very legit starters to join a rotation that's barely had anything for a while, right? JP Sears is kind of the only guy that you can point to be like, hey, this could be a force, kind of a number 3. And that is what he should be this coming season with Severino and Jeffrey Springs above him. The team was 500-ish in the second half of the season. There's some really exciting names. Young guys like Lawrence Butler, who's really found his stride. Brent Rooker is one of the best hitters in baseball right now, super underrated. So I'm with you right now. To me, this is one of those where I'm smashing it over on 70.5 because they're going to do one or two more things. They literally have to spend a little bit more. Or they get in trouble essentially from the league and could get a grievance filed against them for stealing too much of that luxury tax revenue sharing money. So anyway, I'm with you there, Cam. I think that's an easy banger for an over. So for BetMGM account holders, make sure you're checking out the 7 days of parlays because this is it. This is day number 7. It's an SGB boost token. That's the same game parlay boost token for pro football. So for you NFL fans, go get after it. Score a bigger payout if you wager with those boost tokens. And good luck this weekend with your football betting. I miss baseball betting. It's coming soon. Gambling problem or concern, call 1-800-GAMBLER. We're coming back to size up and put the odds on the Roki Sasaki market because we have some updates. New segment called Secret Meetings, and it is about Roki Sasaki's recruitment trips. So he had some secret meetings that got out in New York City with the Mets and the Yankees, and he met with the Cubs. He did not meet with the Phillies. And Dave Dombrowski was vocal about it and sounds a little ticked off. So he said, quote, "We have not been invited to talk to him at this point. We sent in our original info. They know we would very much like to have a presentation, but we haven't been invited to the table." Cam, he just spent time very close by. Have a feeling that he's not going to the Phillies.
Good chance he won't be going to the Phillies. And Dave Dombrowski sounded pretty ticked off about it, right? Dave is a guy who we know Dave wants to win. He's going to do everything in his power to put the best product that he believes out there. And he is pissed off. I mean, can we at least get a seat at the table? Matter of fact, can you put us at the table behind the table so we can just hear what's going on? Like I don't listen. And this is the power of Roki Sasaki being in the situation that he's in, right? He has the ability to say who he wants to have a meeting with. And Philly fans, sorry, you were not in that mix.
Yeah, for me, I've been steadfast the entire time here that I think he's a Dodger, outside chance, Padre. Everything else is much more on the outside, but I'll give the New York City contingent a little bit of a chance here based on what he's trying to work with in terms of making money and marketing dollars. I still think there's a ton of that in Los Angeles with the Dodgers team that could be a little dynasty, and he has other players that are superstars from Japan that he can join. Now, of course, there's other options there. Kodai Senga in New York, Yu Darvish in San Diego, but come on. I mean, you've got Shohei Ohtani, the best player on the planet right now. I'm sure doing some heavy recruiting with Roki Sasaki. Getting back to Philly for a moment, just because we have that update and we can kind of scratch a team off of the list that's probably way shorter than it appears. Okay. More of a hitter's ballpark than a pitcher's ballpark, right? Okay.
Agree.
Rotation looks pretty filled out to me. Not that they wouldn't have a spot for him, but it's not like, oh, this is an easy plug into a rotation. And even if I struggle, I'm all good here. Okay. Definitely not an easy division where you're going to have to face Atlanta. You're going to have to face that Mets offense that keeps getting better now and has Juan Soto. And if we do think he's going to a non-LA big market for marketing purposes, it's going to be New York over Philly. And Cam, it's not. And also, if we believe what he's talking about or what his rep is talking about with how he had a little bit of a tough time with the media out in Japan, you're not going to get more of a break in Philly than you are in New York. Philly, New York, and Boston are pretty similar in terms of being all over you, really just asking all kinds of questions, having more media there, getting after you if you're struggling. So I understand this move from him. If he's going to be a Northeast big market guy, it's going to be in New York over Philadelphia. It's not a knock on the city and the ball club. It's just when you put the pros and cons on paper, it's hard to see that matching up. I think he probably did the same thing and said, yeah, if I'm going to go to a market like this, I'll take the pitcher's park, say with the Mets, or to be a member of the Yankees if I think that I'm going to maximize marketing dollars since I'm not getting paid much on the field.
Yeah, 100%. And then all of that leads me to go, if it's not LA, it sounds like San Diego is the perfect place, right? The media is never too hard on you, pretty chill. The fan base, they're definitely enjoying what they're watching as far as, the team that's been put out there the last few years. They also, if you do have some up and down moments, they won't be too hard on you. So you're absolutely right. Like you said, besides the marketing value, New York seems like a great place for him to be. There's a history of Japanese players that have came through and had a lot of success, so I'm sure he's weighing that as well. But I'm with you. The Phillies just, at any point, even hearing that they were not even invited to the table, I never thought that they were even going to be invited to the table, to be completely honest. That just never seemed like a fit for me when you do your research and your homework and what it sounds like the representatives want as well as him. I'm not surprised at all.
It's a great point on the media situation. If he is truly affected by that out in Japan and wants it to be a little more calm, San Diego is a great spot.
Perfect.
It's a much smaller market. Also, you still get the spotlight in the big moments of pitching against the legendary Shohei Ohtani, pitching against Yamamoto. So you get that action, you get that rivalry, you get that taste of obviously not playing with, but playing against those two much more frequently. So that's why I put them in a clear-cut number 2. Do you think San Diego is a clear-cut 2, though, over LA? Are you still in that camp? It's weird, dude, because their rep, right, came out and said, hey, we don't have a pre-agreement. And I'm like, even if you don't have a pre-agreement, he might have something in his head called a pre-agreement destination for where he wants to go.
Well, this is also, one thing I continue to weigh as I continue to read stories and listen to rumors, right? They're just rumors, but it sounds like himself and Yu Darvish have an extremely close relationship. So if you're making that transition over, it seems like you would want to be around somebody that you're familiar with that can help you make that transition a little easier. So if there's any validity to their relationship, and then too, we talk about the Dodgers and we know how great they've been, but who's to say he's not going, you know what? The Padres have been close. Like this year, the Padres, they were a me away from beating the Dodgers. What if he's thinking that? What if he doesn't want to just go jump on the bandwagon of the Dodgers and what they've been doing? And he wants to go to San Diego and say, I'm going to go with one of my mentors, one of my best friends, Yu Darvish, and I want to show that we can get over the hump. So, it's hard to put it into perspective. We don't know what he wants, but there is a situation and a scenario where he might go, I want to go beat those guys. There are guys out there like that.
End of season power rankings before we got to the offseason for me, Dodgers 1, Padres 2. That's the team that got the closest to beating them. That's the team that definitely could have pulled it off, was hitting its stride as the season was going on. The bullpen's nasty. There's star power. So I'm with you. I think those are the teams to talk about out west. And yeah, for me, obviously we'll keep getting rumors on where Sasaki is meeting and what he's thinking.
Boston might have been in there too, though, Scott. I'm not gonna lie. I thought
really?
Boston.
Dude,
I don't know why.
Those three, New York, Philly, and Boston, for me, if this guy, is really trying to chill a little bit on the media, those are the 3 toughest places on players. I mean, you tell me. You played in New York.
Facts.
Those 3 spots, they get after. And I'm not even, media is not even a fair way to put it. I would say fans too, right? It's just
100%. Phillies fans are hard as hell on you.
Yeah.
New York fans are hard as hell on you. Again, we've seen them boo Jeter. We've seen them boo Judge. We know what the Mets fans, they'll boo anybody if they're pissed off. So I'm with you. Like you're absolutely right. And again, if there's any truth to what he's dealt with as far as the media, and he wants a little bit more subdued atmosphere, San Diego is just screaming his name.
Yeah, the only thing I think that pulls him to the East Coast is if they're trying to break down what kind of marketing dollars he can command by being the man in New York City, say, as a part of the New York Yankees rotation, because that is the one thing. He is not going to make massive money for many years. It's kind of on the same realm as Shohei Ohtani. Ohtani has made his money via marketing much more over his playing career. So we'll see. That part I just don't know. I don't know enough about the player personality wise, and I don't think almost anybody does right now. But he's going to be the talk of the town in January because he's going to sign. I think he's got to sign in that window right around mid-January. I'm forgetting what the date is. So there'll be a lot more FT talking Roki Sasaki because of the value he'll bring. Just like we talked about with Crochet and how he could be a 1. Sasaki's got number 1 stuff. It might take him a little bit of time to develop, but not much. And he's going to be cheap as hell for a team that brings him on. So anyway, let us know your thoughts if you're watching this after the fact, and say you're watching on YouTube, comment below with where you think Roki Sasaki is heading and why he said no to Philadelphia. FT fam, be right back. YouTube crowd, we're going to talk about the CBT tax teams. Everyone else will flap hands in a moment. All right, Cam, did you see all the CBT taxpayers and how obviously a good chunk of it was coming from the Dodgers, the Mets, and the Yankees? They paid 84% of the total luxury tax penalty money, which was $311 million, a major league record. LA paid 103, Mets paid 97. On the other end of the 9 teams that paid it, you had the Cubs, who just barely were over. They paid about $500,000.
Yeah, you know what? And I love to hear it, right? And if you're a fan of those organizations, you love to hear it. It lets you know going into every offseason and following up, your team is trying to put the best product out there to win. And the Dodgers, they have been rewarded for it. We've seen what they continue to do each and every year. They are right there on the cusp of winning the World Series. The Mets, we saw how close they got. The Cubs, their direction has been a little bit up and down. Not sure where they're going right now. You go get Kyle Tucker. But this is what you want to see. The teams in the biggest markets spending the most money to try to make their teams the most competitive. As a fan, this is what you want to see. As an ex-player, when I was coming up, Scotty, it used to be a lot of teams, over the CBT because they were trying to put the best competitive product out there, whether they have it or not. And that's what you want to see as a fan. So, I appreciate those markets doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and as much as
Stevie Cohen and the Dodgers, because they're making people move off their wallets.
And they reinvest, and obviously they make more than most teams. But if you're a fan that's like, hey, it's not fair, my team, doesn't have a chance here. Look at what Cleveland put together this past season. Also, there were 3 teams out of these 9 that didn't make the playoffs this past season. That's the Rangers, the Giants, and the Cubs. All right, we're back in a minute. I got to sneeze, so we'll hit some Christmas cheer, and then we'll slap hands. Let's slap. We've got a few minutes, got a lot to go over. First off, programming note, FT Live last time here is right now for the next few minutes, but we do have 2 season wrap-up shows that we put together, and those are running Tuesday and Thursday. So the 24th and the 26th, 1 o'clock Eastern time, if you're watching on TV, or if you're watching elsewhere, that's where we will run the show for you for a couple hours. Going to go over topics like individual performances, highs and lows, team performances, highs and lows, and we'll cover it like we do baseball the way it should be covered. Also, Cam, I've gotten probably the most popular question in the chat today is, where the heck am I? And are you a pinball enthusiast? So I'm at the Pinball Asylum. Yeah, I'm in an arcade. This is the world-class pinball arcade in the US, if not the world, hundreds of machines. So I'm in Fort Myers, Florida at the Pinball Asylum, and it is hours. There's tournaments, stuff like that. So if you want to get more information, you can Google it, look up Pinball Asylum. So you have any last thoughts? I don't know if you want to do a New Year's resolution, a way too early prediction, anything you're looking forward to, even with this offseason, dude. I always stress this. I love the MLB offseason. We just had a flurry of moves. We had a little bit of action, obviously, at the winter meetings, but we still have a ton of really meaningful names that are going to get signed and traded in January and even in February. So it makes the offseason feel quicker. If everything happened in 24 to 72 hours, we'd be sitting here like, damn, I miss baseball. We'd be doing very different conversations right now.
Yeah, you know what? One thing that continues to come to my mind, and as we talk about our first baseman, and we went down the list today, I just been thinking about a great fit, and I'm watching the great Buster Posey make moves, and I think he's going to do a great job of turning the San Francisco Giants around. But a guy who I think is tailor-made for that division and tailor-made to play 81 games in that home ballpark, go out and get Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso would be a great fit. There's not a ballpark in the game that could hold him. He's the type of bopper you need at first base. And not to mention, I think what he brings to a clubhouse, I think his character, I think his passion, I think his genuineness as a person would take that team to another level. Giants, go out and find a way to sign Pete Alonso. He's your guy, I'm telling you.
Wow. What about Corbin Burns for the Giants too while they're at it? The problem is they're not going to do both of those. Who would you rather have?
I'd rather have Corbin Burns for a long-term deal. But when I'm thinking about that park, man, and how tough it is to hit in that park, and they've made some adjustments, Pete Alonso literally just screams the perfect fit for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And yeah, again, for everyone, we'll stay on for a couple minutes for the YouTube crowd, TV crowd. We're going to leave you in a moment, but you will see us tomorrow, AJ, Kratz, myself, in a show that we put together. So not live if there's more moves, because you know it could happen. Cam, with the activity that we had over the weekend, I would be surprised if we don't see one or two more things go down. I know some fans were just asking what's up with Burns and Bregman. It sounds like that market for both of them will take a little bit more time. They're in unique positions. They've also got Boris as their rep, and they're asking for high prices, and they are, the cream of the crop, especially Burns at the pitching, in the pitching market. I mean, that's the big name that's left, but it's a massive price tag, and I don't know who's involved at that level.
I don't either, but man, if I'm Corbin Burns and I'm watching what some of these other guys are getting, and I'm looking at my track record and what I've done, I need my paper. This should not be a same situation as Blake Snell. Give the guy what he deserves. Let's not do this one-year deal, this one-year thing. The guy is proven. He's a Cy Young Award winner, and he's just a winner. So if I'm him, hey, go ahead and wait it out. You deserve your bread, my guy.
That's right. But the teams that are looking at him should be warned. If you really like the player, get it done in January, not February. Regular spring trainings for your pitchers. If you're paying for that value, make sure you get every single ounce of that value. FT fam, have a great Christmas, New Year's, the whole deal. We'll be back for a recap show tomorrow. All right, we've got a few minutes to try and rapid fire some questions from everyone. I answered the question of where I am right now. This place also hosted the World Pinball Championships a couple years ago. So it is well known in the pinball world. Owl asked a good question, Cam. How much would a player like Rickey Henderson make in today's free agent market? Man, that's a dynamic player.
I can see Rickey right now, like, ooh, 700, easy. Listen. I don't want to continue to say this like I'm hating. He got like Willie Randolph said, a perfect storm. But if Rickey Henderson played in today's era, when you talk about the bags, the homers, the charisma, that man is making 700 easy.
Yeah, I'm with you. If
not
it's
even a question.
If it's Rickey in his prime or Rickey at the young age, you have to look at it the same way, right?
Yes.
Obviously, if it's a 34-year-old player, it's different. But if it's Rickey hitting free agency for the first time, let's say he was called up at like 20 and he hits free agency at 26 or 27 years old, he's getting it. Yeah. Now,
the greatest leadoff hitter of all time.
The greatest leadoff hitter of all time. Also, had some crazy longevity. And like you mentioned, which I thought was really cool, he was hitting the trainer's room before it was cool, before it was in style, and he was onto something.
He was ahead of his time, man. When you hear these stories about how he prepared, it's crazy how when I came into the game, they literally would berate me. What are you doing? You're too young to be hurt. And now you got a guy who is one of the greatest to ever do it. He was so much ahead of the game. And it's fun just to hear those stories, right? To hear how guys tick, what made them tick, how they went about their business. It makes the legacy even more special.
Sorry, I muted myself. Dodgers territory is coming up next. So you've got Alana and Clint taking over. The Teoscar Hernandez rumors and I would say negotiating tactics continue. You had the Ken Rosenthal report about what he was looking for. It looks like about 3 years, 66 to 72 mil, and the Dodgers are okay on the years, but not the money. So I'm sure that saga will continue on DT. They'll probably talk about Roki Sasaki. So flow right over to that channel. Talk to Alana and Clint. Again, Cam, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, dude. We'll talk in 2025.
You got it, my guy. Happy holidays to everyone.
Appreciate it.